This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, Madeline Pumariega, president of Miami-Dade College, on the role of higher education in economic recovery.
Institutions today, not only business, but higher education, have to be informed by data and strategy. And being a lifelong learner means that you are continuously focused on your trade, because everything that we know today changes tomorrow.
Good day and welcome to the 538th in our series of Distinguished Speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. We're honored to have with us today Madeline Pumariega, incoming president of Miami-Dade College. Madeline, welcome. With the coronavirus pandemic in full swing, you're going to be talking with the Economic Club today about the role of higher education in economic recovery. What's your message?
My message is partnership and collaboration. Our community colleges and state colleges across the state of Florida are really workforce engines for communities. And so as communities recover from the pandemic, they need to be partners with our colleges so that we are preparing the workforce of today, the workforce of tomorrow. We're helping members in our own communities upskill so they can compete for the jobs that will return, and ensure that companies have that right talent and workforce so that they can survive, thrive, and grow right here in Florida.
And as we record this in mid-December of 2020, you are finishing your service this month as Executive Vice President and Provost of Tallahassee Community College. Tell us, how has teaching and learning been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
I really think it's been enhanced. When I think about our faculty and what they've been doing in turning their classrooms into virtual labs of learning, and they're focused on teaching, it really is amazing. Oftentimes it's said, that higher education can't move on a dime, that we need a long runway. And what we did do during this time is pivot to remote learning immediately, but that hasn't been remote in regards to not connecting with students. I think the way that it's changed just the student experience and how we're connecting with students, and then our faculty and how they're making digital classrooms interactive classrooms, and the way that we've brought back some of our face-to-face courses as well in a safe environment.
Gotcha. Now, you previously served as chancellor of the Florida college system, which is comprised of 28 colleges, nearly 800,000 students across Florida. You yourself are a product of the college system. You were a student at Miami-Dade College, so this will be kind of a homecoming of sorts, won't it?
It sure will. It's wonderful to return at an institution where I not only had an opportunity as a student athlete. I played basketball there. It's where I grew my career for 20 years, and really has been a place of opportunity for me to be able to come back and lead it and give back to our community. Just is really amazing.
Now, you're an example of a lifelong learner as well. We hear that expression that everyone needs to have that mentality. And today you're pursuing a doctoral degree in higher education. How important is that constant learning mantra as it applies to the broader Florida workforce?
It's very important. And I think that institutions today, not only business, but higher education, have to be informed by data and strategy. And being a lifelong learner means that you are continuously focused on your trade, because everything that we know today changes tomorrow. You have to be able to pivot. And in a world of innovation and technology, I think the rapid deployment of innovative strategies and of new ideas and of data really require us to stay on top of our game, and not a moment to rest up, but just a moment to continue to leverage the knowledge that one has today, along with acquiring new knowledge that allows your institution or your business, if you're leading it, to pivot and be innovative and be successful.
Madeline Pumariega, incoming president of Miami-Dade College, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing your formal remarks and learning more about the role of higher education in economic recovery.
Thank you.
Now, here's Jim Murdaugh, the president of Tallahassee Community College, with our formal introduction.
It is a real thrill for me to get to do this. So thank you for the opportunity to introduce President Madeline Pumariega. So let me tell you a little bit about Madeline. I'm not going to go over her entire background. I'm going to hit the things that I think are most important because they get to the heart of who Madeline is. She currently is still serving as the executive vice president at TCC until she takes over, but she is the president of Miami-Dade College, the largest college in America. And I will tell you, what you are about to hear from her is representative of the fact that she is a well-respected thought leader, not only locally, but statewide and nationally. And Miami-Dade is a tremendous beneficiary of having Madeline go there. And Madeline comes to this because she started there as a student at Miami-Dade and was actually a basketball player at Miami-Dade. Later went to work there, did some advising, and worked her way up through the ranks there, left there. She was a campus president for one of the campuses at Miami-Dade College, went to work for Take Stock in Children, where she ran that organization. And I first met Madeline when she became chancellor of the Florida college system. You may know that our system has 28 colleges, what we like to call the Great 28, all across the state of Florida. And Madeline served as the chancellor of that system, working on behalf of all the colleges and, more importantly, on behalf of all of our students. That's when I first got to see and meet Madeline. And when she made a decision to leave that role, when the governor's transition occurred, and she felt it was time for her to move on, I could not have been more grateful and happier that she wanted to get back on a college campus, and she joined TCC as our executive vice president and provost. For almost the last 2 years, she has helped us move in our status forward, and you may know that we were recognized this past year as one of the top 10 colleges in America by the 1,200 colleges in America, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a remarkable achievement, and it's her stewardship and leadership among the tremendous other leaders that we have at the college that really brought us there, and her focus and commitment. But the thing that I want to share with you that would never be on a bio anywhere is the fact that as I've gotten to know Madeline more and more, there is no finer human being that I have had the privilege of working with. So with that, I'd love to introduce you to President Madeline Pumariega.
I really get to call President Murdaugh friend. I've learned so much from him. I said this during my interview. They asked a question which I didn't know they would ask, but who's a leader that you most admire and that you've learned from? And what I've learned from Jim, just in his leadership and his service to this community, has inspired me and has been amazing. So thanks for the friendship and for the ride. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the higher education landscape. I think there'll be a slide that's going to go up soon. But this is an interesting year, and that's why I said, I wonder if he said last year in January of 2020 or earlier this year that we would be in a pandemic and that we would have the kind of crisis in America, not only the health crisis, but the economic crisis and the kind of financial instability crisis, which touches all of us, really. You probably saw an article today in the paper about, Jim has quoted his leadership in creating a way to help our students that are homeless. And so we put out a message, and what we learned overnight, 500 students applied for assistance, and 73 students right here in our community have provided to us within 24 hours evidence that they will be evicted. And we're working to help them. So think about the ripples of just the financial instability happening as a result of the health crisis. And higher education is not immune to it, impacted in a way that is compounding where we are in terms of higher education, particularly community colleges, and our role in economic recovery. Typically, colleges always play a role, especially community colleges, in economic recovery. This one will be much more strategic and targeted, and states that get it right will recover faster and actually have job growth. And so I'll hit on a couple of points affecting the higher ed landscape. We're not having children. You probably might know that, might not know that. You have kids that you're saying, when am I going to be a grandparent? And what will happen is that by 2026, we'll have the smallest high school graduating classes in America. And so that's going to have an impact on higher education enrollment. And the higher education institutions that get this part right and start working on what that talent pipeline looks like. Just think about your business having a decrease already, a marked decrease. And we're seeing that accelerated right now. You can go to the next slide. There you go. So when you look at that demographic cliff, that's going to have an impact. COVID-19 accelerated it. We're seeing enrollment declines across the country. Here in Florida, our 28 colleges are seeing enrollment declines. Unusual, because when the economy drops, people come back to school, back to college to retool. In this case, we're not seeing that. At TCC, we're down about 5%. We're overperforming the national numbers, which are about 12 or 13% down. And we are also overperforming most of our state colleges, and other places like Miami-Dade down 12%, on average 10 and up to 15%. So you see this combination here. There is a pressure point for colleges, and you couple that at the same time that we are trying to really close that equity gap. The equity gap is going to continue, not just what we saw earlier this year with Black Lives Matter and all of that, but I really think it is a talent issue. We're not closing those equity gaps. When it's been one of our focuses at TCC, when you're a white student at TCC, we're graduating you at about a 51%. National average of graduation at community college is about 35%, so we're certainly overperforming there. But when you take a student in poverty, it's about 19%. And so that's going to continue for us if we want to have a talented workforce in the state, a diverse workforce, and leveraging that, closing the gap, getting to that finish line. And so colleges that create and innovate there with stackable credentials where students can start at a certificate, industry certification, seamless transition into an associate's, and then another seamless transition into a bachelor's program, which really gets to the next point, this idea of value of college. We hear time and time again that college is not for everyone. Couple of things. A 4-year university pathway may not be for everyone, but a credential beyond high school needs to be for everyone, particularly if Florida is going to compete and if regions in Florida are going to compete for headquarters and job growth. When we take a group of students after high school that do nothing else, they graduate high school, we found them a year later making $8.19 minimum wage. There's a caveat to that right now, and that is the $15 minimum wage that Florida just passed. So it'll be interesting, the impact of that, because now, even if you don't do high school, you'll get to $15. And I think there we're going to have to work with our K-12 and start to really look at early college opportunities for students so that they do get those credentials. Our businesses are going to need it. We can't afford the $15 with high school level skill sets. We're going to need to level up students as they graduate, level up employees as you're moving towards a $15 minimum wage in Florida. And so this idea that college isn't for everyone is really not the case, and especially when you look at companies coming to Florida. I was on the governor's transition team, Governor DeSantis, and I came to Tallahassee via Governor Scott, and he was the jobs governor. And when we were talking about what would be initiatives that would be important to continue Florida's success, it was about workforce. And Governor DeSantis signed an executive order wanting the desire to make Florida number one in workforce by 2030. And so how do you measure whether you are number one in workforce? It's educational attainment. And when you look at educational attainment rates, which means the population from 25 to 64 that hold a post-secondary credential, not just a bachelor's, it can be a certificate, an associate's, a bachelor's, and beyond, Florida's ranked 20. And when we're looking at companies to attract, they look at those numbers. Can I come to Florida and have the talent, not just to relocate, but to grow my business? And looking at those pathways and making the case about it is right now the time to invest in post-secondary credentials and that path to college. But I would say the other reason is really the economic and moral imperative. I think that post-COVID, we will accentuate the crisis we have in America today about income inequality. And we're seeing that especially in rural communities and rural parts of the country, and we see it here in rural parts of Florida. When we look at the last economic recession in 2008, 2009, our rural communities were much slower in recovering than those that our urban centers are. And so I think that's another part of making sure that we're creating those strong pathways to level up our workforce. And that includes students coming from high school, but it includes the incumbent workforce that we do have currently and those that have been unemployed as of COVID, so that they are competing for the jobs of the future. Financial instability. That higher ed does not, certainly in Florida, is at the center of what will happen in terms of some of the financial instability. One, declining enrollments. On average, the 28 colleges includes TCC. About 50% of the funding comes from state dollars, 50% comes from student tuition and fees. There continues to be a commitment in Florida about affordability and not raising tuition and fees on the backs of students, who oftentimes it's our middle class families that are impacted the most by those tuition increases. And then what appears to be probably a legislative session that won't have new money and certainly less money. We'll have to make the case about a return on investment. TaxWatch did a study for the 28 colleges on ROIs. And so when you think about every dollar the state invests in one of our 28 colleges, the return on there is up to between $15, $18, depending upon the region. But more importantly, the return on investment for a student is up to 16% that invest in their education. And how we look at that is earnings, their increased earnings over time, and then what they're reinvesting in terms of their income and discretionary income, to whether it's purchasing a home, a car, or travel. And so I think the colleges and higher education as a whole, this legislative session will have to make really a good argument for investing even when funds are short, because of the long-term ROI that both colleges and universities, not only do we provide to our local communities, but then our output of students and what they contribute, and the case there. We went remote overnight, as most of us did, most of your businesses, and some colleges are doing better and others are not. I think that that's going to be a critical role. Who got it right? There was a great Twitter tweet 2 days ago, someone that tweeted that a student at Tallahassee Community College was getting the same educational experience than a student at Harvard. We're like, who are you? And can we be friends? So immediately we're like, where are you? Come right now. It was an unsolicited tweet, but the point is, it's exactly right. It'll be interesting who gets this right. I believe we've gotten it right at Tallahassee Community College because we had the right leadership and we were intentional about how we were going to support students. We introduced in the summer another instructional modality. So at the time that many folks say that higher education moves as slow as molasses, we did an entire instructional delivery that we launched in the summer called Live, learning interactively in a virtual environment. And we had to level up our own faculty so that our students could have that kind of experience. We made that decision based on data. We did surveys of our students in late April when we moved remotely, and we said, what's missing? And they said engagement. Engagement. Not technology. They said, we're okay with the technology. We're getting the instructional materials. We miss our faculty and we miss each other. So what we did in the summer is create that interaction through synchronous and asynchronous education, and then we went to scale this fall. And our numbers are hot off the press, and we're incredibly proud of, because the second thing that we did is we hired 10 academic success coaches. Usually students come in and get help on a campus. How could we reach out to them? And so our success rate among first-time in college students last fall was about 70%, 78% this fall. Last fall, about 72% success rate overall for students, 74.9% this fall. So I think colleges that get this part right, and they're starting to get their data right now, will have a path to accelerated recovery and will be able to keep the students that they have and recruit. What happens by going overnight digitally is that you now as a student have a choice. You can pick the best online college anywhere, not the one in your backyard. And so, upskilling our own faculty, looking at our processes, supporting students in a virtual environment, this won't go away. I presume you probably will have, even in 2021, 4 or 5 virtual meetings, because you can bring speakers from anywhere. We can bring faculty from anywhere. So there is a benefit to it. It's how we reimagine a student experience in a post-COVID environment. And institutions focused on that, I think, will do better in terms of their own recovery and especially enrollment. Another area is education tech companies. About maybe 15 years ago, massive online courses, MOOCs. And we thought for sure that was the biggest disruption of higher education. Oh my God, all the articles were there. Basically, you're just going to get free education. Stanford's putting one out, 200,000 students enrolled. Didn't go anywhere. Ed tech companies are real. They are starting to provide the Uber of education. And higher education institutions are going to have to shift to the Uber of education model, which is personalized. It's real time. And in some cases, it fits our business model. In some other cases, getting into the ed tech competitive ecosystem and partnering will be our best point. And we've done that. There's a company out of Gainesville, Study Edge. And so Ethan Feldman started, it was a tutoring center at UF. He's created Study Edge. He's also founder of Algebra Nation. Instead of our tutors sitting back, we partnered with Study Edge, and students get real-time support on that platform at 10 o'clock at night, at 11 at night when they're really doing their homework and our success centers are closed. And so there's an opportunity where instead of trying to compete and duplicate what they're doing. Nope, we went out and we said, we want you in every single math course. And so what we're seeing is our early numbers of our fall semester, an increase in college algebra student success, because we embedded Study Edge in every single course. So it's not that a student goes to the tutoring center, a passive approach. It's individualized and personalized. The academic success coaches put a 16-week communication plan. They knew students that were taking English 1101 had an essay due at the end of the week. On Monday, they had a reminder. They said, hey, we know you have a persuasive essay due Friday. We're having a little boot camp session if you want to join in to help you do your outline. And that's the Uber of education, right? Right now, I get on my phone. I tell someone to pick me up here. I pick the car. I know the location. I know what time. And I know how much it's going to cost me. And now I can even tell them if I want them to talk or not. It's a little, I want the air conditioner or not. I think that's a little overkill. But how can we deliver that personalized experience? Because our consumers are having that experience in everything that they're interacting in the business world. So there'll be opportunities, and I think the ed tech companies and competition are real and will continue, very different than the MOOCs of the past. I think the intersection and that nexus of personalized real-time education is there. And I also think that they're reacting to the lack of talent. When you think about Google certificates, is almost like the digital apprenticeships. And so Google has a suite of certifications that you can get on these modules and begin to do. And it's going to enhance your resume. One of the things that we're looking at TCC is creating a series of micro credentials and having students almost have an Apple Wallet. And so when they're thinking about what jobs to apply, what's a good fit, they've got all these micro credentials that they're earning along the way instead of just that degree, but what's the skills you're earning and how do you leverage them into earning power. And I think that's a place where technology and higher education partnering together can accelerate that kind of innovation that will help the economic recovery of communities, but certainly will help individuals level up, if they will, so that they do compete for the jobs that are out there. I think another part is economic diversification and the role that colleges will play with economic development agencies locally and statewide, working with Enterprise Florida, and developing strategies to bring companies here to have, there are going to be jobs. Our unemployment right now in Florida is about 6%, 6.3%. There are states that are 12 and 15%. And when we talk to business leaders, they are still hiring in some places. Where they're not finding is the talent that they need. And so I think, the community colleges will play an important role. During 2009, we recovered 11.6 million jobs in this country. Of the 11.6 million jobs that we recovered, 11.3 million went to individuals with some college. Not a bachelor's, some college. It's that associates, the certificates, and I think community colleges are those workforce engines that are going to be well positioned to help the state recover and help communities recover as well with the right partnerships. And then I'll close with the future of work is now. The Florida Chamber put out the 2030 business, forging Florida's future, securing Florida's future. And we thought, we have until 2030. The projections is automation and all of that would start to peak 2025 and into 2030. It's now. COVID-19 accelerated that very quickly. Remote working accelerated that for businesses as well, looking at every process and what does need to have that human interaction. Where do you leverage technology for efficiency and effectiveness? And so I think that the goal for the chamber for Florida is to get to 60% of 25 to 64-year-olds having a post-secondary credential by 2030. We're probably going to need to accelerate it to keep the state in the most competitive position to attract new businesses and businesses that are growing in terms of economically. The impact to small businesses will be severe, and that will have a longer time recovery in terms of that. And then when you look at the skills of 80%, the chamber put out 80% of Floridians would have the employability skills needed. And so those employability skills, some folks call soft skills. Career Source calls them resilient skills. I call them future-proof skills. They're the ones that you take with you from company to company, job to job. Communication, the use of data and predictive analytics, computation, critical thinking, dependability, reliability, integrating those not only in students' high school experience, but college experience, and then being able to deploy those to the existing workforce. And the ability for us to contract with companies today in making sure that we're helping their employees level up. So Florida, again, meets those goals, which are now accelerated to today versus a 2030 runway. But I will close with our ability to recover post-COVID is really an education pathway. It's going to have to be a three-prong approach. The right investments at the state level, and that is vaccines. We've flattened COVID and COVID is gone, right? And in that process, that's first, the data, the science, the health. But when we pivot, the right investments, continuing to focus on talent and not thinking this is the time where we're going to sit back, we just can't afford that. Building on those talent pipelines and pathways and attracting businesses with the kind of environment that we do have in Florida. No state income tax, low taxes, low regulatory, over-regulations of businesses. Those things, I think, will position Florida for us to be able to recover, and communities and working with community colleges will help employees get back to work and keep their jobs for the future. And so I will pause here and take any questions that you have, and I hope that I've given you some things to think about. So thank you so much.
Well, President Madeline, thank you so much for an amazing presentation. While we're going to miss you very much here, we know that you're going to do amazing things down in Miami, so congratulations on your promotion. I was really struck by the fact that you said that you've kind of looked at high school students when they graduate and you follow them. They, on average, make minimum wage, $8. Give us an idea of the range of salary that people with certificates or up to a 2-year degree from TCC might expect to make in comparison to that $8 an hour.
Sure. We had, when I became chancellor, we actually implemented performance metrics for the colleges. And the performance metrics included the number of students that graduated. But there was a really critical metric, and that is an earnings metric. How much did students earn after they completed a certificate or an associate's or a workforce baccalaureate? And so colleges only received points if the student earned 100% more than the entry-level job. And so what we found around the state is that minimally $16, $24. And so for associate degrees, on average, $33,000. When you look at associates in science degrees, which lead you right into the workforce, like nursing, those averaged about $48,000. And then the workforce degrees among our 28 colleges, like the BSN, the limited baccalaureates that we do, the average earnings there was $57,000. And over a lifetime, earning that bachelor's degree, you can expect to earn more, about $1 million more. The range with earning those additional credentials sits in an average between $400,000 and $800,000 more over a lifetime of earnings.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam President, dear friend. You point out some of the research textbooks, but it's even more significant. Just in summary, our college system, folks, the community college, now college system, is truly one of the bright, bright stars, is absolutely a diamond in the rough. It's hard to truly imagine, even with statistical information and data, the value it provides in each of the 28 locations and all of their subsets and additional locations. It really is the workhorse of training and value add. Those that graduate from the community college system or college system more often than not complete their 4-year degree and move on to other things. I'm one of the stalwarts of that, as is my wife. But I want to thank Dr. Murdoch and Madeline. You all have been just phenomenal leaders in this state, and we know that we're going to have incredible leadership from you in Miami-Dade. Look forward to doing that. One thing you really made to connection I didn't see before is the $15 hour wage. And there's got to be some way, I think there's an opportunity, and that is while they'll be making the money, we have to overcome the disincentive that is and will exist, but then somehow distinguish between those who will make 15, that they can get the job. Because what's going to happen, unquestionably, tax watch research showed it on the minimum wage, I'm sure others, that there'll be a lot of people who will get zero. So, lower wage is better than no wage. But by having the certificates, by having some of that college background, that successfully enables them to have that certificate or that recognition, hopefully will allow them to keep that job and move forward. So that's something, if you could talk a little bit about that, what you all envision to help make that a reality. We'd love to work with you in that regard. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dominic, for your leadership. So I'll say two things. Last year, Florida produced about 350,000 credentials. Of that, 113,000 were produced by the Florida colleges, by the 28 colleges. So our impact, you're right, is so significant, especially when we think about being a catalyst for economic mobility in our communities. I do want to talk about the $15, and I think that's where we have to call on business partners. Looking at what are those minimum requirements and making sure that they're working with the colleges, the universities, the tech centers and colleges about what skills do you really need to be at that $15 and how do we make sure that we're building those skills. Again, a path through high school into college and beyond, but not doing, the $15 for zero skills, right? Like all you need is your high school diploma. I think that businesses are going to have to get really creative with what are those minimum requirements to get the $15 position jobs, and how do those connect back to education programs that are not just a 4-year university pathway, but that are really workforce and build on stackable credentials. And I think that's a way that we could create the win-win, have the workforce that we need for the future, and then be able to provide some income, livable wage income as well.
Madam President, thank you for being here. I went to Miami-Dade when there was only a North Campus, so it's a long time ago. You're talking about skills and very impressive all the initiatives that y'all were doing. And I think the community colleges, obviously as a community college kid, are a wonderful place for those of us that can't go immediately to a university because we don't have the money or the scholarship. Having said that, as a longtime employer in this community, and I'm not talking about community college kids so much, let's just talk in the generic sense of higher education. The skills that I'm not seeing that my future potential employees don't have are things like grammar check on a computer, spell check on a computer, the lack of independent critical thinking. I'll give you an example. I was with 4 other folks. All of us were association executives. We're having breakfast at a restaurant here in town on Friday. We had a young college student, freshman, admittedly, didn't go to TCC, by the way. I won't mention the name of the school. And so this young lady's taking our menu. So I picked something at the Village Inn that said you have to pick 4 things. Well, I only picked 3. And this young lady was dumbfounded. She didn't know what to do. She had the little computer in her hand. She goes, well, you got to pick 4. I said, well, I don't want 4. It sort of reminded me of that movie with Jack Nicholson, with Helen Hunt, where he says, I want toast. And she goes, we don't have toast. He said, well, give me a bacon, lettuce, and tomato without the bacon, lettuce, and tomato. And so the question becomes is, what are we doing about teaching critical thinking? And I have a second question I'd like to follow up with, but critical thinking is so important, and I'm not seeing that from kids that are coming out of higher education in general.
So I'll say 2 things. One, I think work-based learning opportunities. We've got to partner and do better with giving students an opportunity to see what the world of work is earlier. And then second, we can't expect that everything's going to be taught in K-12. It's just not going to be. It's also a part of what's happening at home and what's happening in extracurricular activities beyond. And that is a place where there is opportunities for investment at the state level and for some creativity about not everything you're going to learn of life you're going to learn in a classroom. You typically are going to learn because you're having these experiences. So I think there's opportunities to partner with business, increase work-based learning opportunities earlier, and that can be an internship, it can be job shadowing. I think when we look at K-12, some of the experiential extracurricular activities, and then how do we connect that to community opportunities where students can engage in different initiatives in the community, and then parenting, and how do we partner with parents, especially now in this Zoom environment where you could deploy these life skills, this life game where you could have a student kind of navigate life and earn credit. Not what we've learned is that you can actually do some things virtually. Not everything had to be in class time, which is oftentimes a limitation with K-12. If we don't test it, we can't teach it, right? But Commissioner Corcoran says it all the time, the importance of strong, solid education that's just not specific, but really is whether it's civic engagement, history, communications, and then those important people skills and common sense.
Okay. Very good answer, thank you. The second question, when I went to college 45 years ago, we were taught one of the most critical and important things was diversity of thinking. We don't seem to have that in higher education anymore. And I wonder, you going down to Miami where I grew up and knowing what kind of a place that is, I'm just wondering what you think can be done, what do you think you will try to do to bring diversity of thought so that students aren't going to be scared because somebody says something that they don't like and they just go off into a corner. We don't want that. We want them engaging. We want them to be critically thinking, but diversity of thought. Thank you.
So it's a wonderful question we get often. I will say at the community college level, the average age is 26. In a classroom, there's an 18-year-old, there's also a 55-year-old. And so I would distinguish sometimes a university pathway versus a college, state college, open access institution classroom, which is much more diverse in age and diverse in life experiences. And I think that oftentimes when a class looks homogeneous, and I don't say homogeneous in terms of color, homogeneous because everybody had a 1300 to get in. Everyone had a 4.0. That's where there's challenges. That's where you really have to push for that thought process to expand. In our classrooms across the state, in our 28 colleges, average size is still 30, 25, 30, 35 across, not only at TCC, but across all the colleges. That allows for that intimacy of learning, if you will. Second, our faculty and how you drive also, capstone projects that support that. Our adjunct faculty, when you think about community colleges, state colleges, 60-35 in terms of full-time, part-time. I think adjunct faculty bring that world of life experience into the classroom as well. But I would just say it starts from the top about creating a culture of inclusion. And it doesn't mean that if I don't see eye to eye to you, we can't have civil discourse. And we have to bring that back. One of the things that I think dawns on me during all of Black Lives Matter movement is that our students weren't in classrooms. And I kept thinking, the country's laboratory of open dialogue and processing is our colleges and our universities, and think that no one was in classrooms at that time in the middle of the summer having these conversations in this life lab, if you will. And so we have to continue to preserve that.
Hey Madeline, I have a question for you with your state hat on. I'm watching all these lost kiddos who have apparently not shown up for school this year, hundreds and hundreds of thousands across the state of Florida. Many of them would have been juniors and seniors in high school, which means we're going to have a really steep graduation decline this year. And so that means that I'm assuming colleges need to be thinking a little bit differently about how you're going to engage those students, and wonder if there's a task force or conversation at the state level about how you're going to recapture that talent pool, because it's otherwise going to disappear really quickly.
It's a wonderful question. So first thing I want to say is hug them. I've talked to parents in the last few weeks, and everyone is stressed about, oh my God, the teaching isn't at the level, my kid's not learning. And I've said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Make sure they learn this part, and empathy first. We'll get to the learning gains, and I think there's going to be enormous learning loss for years to come, not just this year. I think we're going to see it at all levels. Third grade reading level predicts so much in a child's life. So I think, I know that again, my state hat, the commissioners hyper focused on that. Part of why we wanted to make sure that schools open is giving students a place and having them come back and finding out where are they. Who are we missing? How do we create that? I'll tell you what we did at TCC, which I think should really be scaled. There was an emergency order signed that allowed us to look at multiple measures to allow a student to take dual enrollment. We jumped on it. There are some colleges that didn't. So in the summer, we increased our dual enrollment. But we increased Black student dual enrollment by 60%. And we had a 93.1 success rate. You have to be courageous. You have to be bold, but we provided support services. It wasn't about academic, it wasn't like academic suicide. It wasn't, we took them and then we let them figure it out. Nope. We added academic success coaches, interventions and tutoring. It isn't sliding back to remedial education. And I know that some will say, well, we've got to test them. And if they have that learning loss, put them into a developmental education course. I think we have to try to redesign our curriculum, knowing that we're going to have students that are coming in that may not have had the kind of experience that others, and especially the our low income students that are most at risk for learning loss in these situations and may not have had the kind of support at home that others had. And so back to individualizing education, having that personalization. But I think, putting a task force at the college level, I think is a wonderful idea, as long as it doesn't get defined into take a test, start in developmental ed and never get out, but that it has really innovative and creative solutions like we did with evidence of success.
Madam President, congratulations and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
You talked about the demographic edge and the issue of the number of graduations in 26, I think you said. There is a whole other body of study that throughout the world is that the demographic edge on the other end of the spectrum, that many countries are facing, that the total workforce will decline and fall off the cliff. It's called the demographic cliff, in the sense that certain countries will simply run out of people. So as we look at America today, as the decline goes down on the lower end, are we in a situation where that same sort of issue could be an issue for the United States, in the sense of the workforce, the aging workforce, the boomers, etc., are coming out of the workforce? How do you then engage on that end of the spectrum as well as the lower end?
So I think it's a really wonderful question, and I'm sure some of the data scientists could do predictive analytics and probably tell us maybe it's 2060 when we get there. We saw, and everyone called it the silver tsunami, right, about the baby boomers leaving the workforce. What we're also seeing is that there's a stretch in the lifetime. The limitation of the 25 to 64-year-old, when we say that's the prime workforce, that we're measuring educational attainment. My dad is 83, gets up every single morning, puts on a suit and tie in Miami, drives across town, and is still a senior vice president. Tell that guy to retire, it ain't happening. Cognitive skills are up, having lunch and still, cutting deals and closing loans. So we've got a longer runway of what we typically said in this country. Some other countries, no. Those are some harder numbers where people actually do retire. I think in the United States, that's a longer runway. Haven't done any, I'm a data geek, as you might be able to tell, but I haven't run those. Now you've piqued my interest about where that would be, and if there's a nexus for crisis emerging in the United States in the next decade.
It's a new book on that. The whole issue is discussed. Some countries in a real, like Japan, China, they have a real problem.
I'll pick it up. Thank you. I think that ends, and I just want to say thank you, and just a note of gratitude to Tallahassee and especially to TCC. I said, Take Stock in Children was great for my soul, to help kids in poverty find a pathway through education. Tallahassee and TCC has been great for my heart, and it is a bittersweet moment. It's great to go home and be back with family, but I absolutely love this community, love our college, love my friends and family here, and so thank you so much.
You've been listening to Madeline Pumariega, president of Miami-Dade College, speaking before the Economic Club of Florida on December 16, 2020 in Tallahassee, Florida. For more information on Miami-Dade College, visit mdc.edu. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment on important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Governor's Club in Tallahassee, Florida.